The scene was set. The lights of the Capitol building burned brightly against the darkened Washington sky, casting long shadows over the city. Pam Bondi, the United States Attorney General under President Donald Trump, had just finished a late meeting with the president. She exited the Oval Office, her sharp heels clicking against the polished marble floors of the White House as she walked with the kind of confidence only years in the courtroom could provide. She had a dossier clutched in her hand, its corners sharp and crisp, just like the determination in her eyes. As she made her way to the press room, Bondi's phone buzzed. It was a notification about a fiery speech that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had just delivered on the House floor. AOC had accused the Trump administration of corruption, claiming that Bondi herself was abusing her power to suppress political opponents. It was a bold move even for AOC, whose fierce debates and passionate speeches had become her trademark. Bondi smirked. So, she wants to play this game? Fine, she muttered to herself, sliding her phone back into her pocket. She knew exactly how to handle a political firebrand like AOC with hard evidence and an iron will. The press room buzzed with anticipation. Journalists from every major network had gathered, their lenses focused on the podium, ready to capture whatever headline Bondi would deliver. She stepped up to the microphone, the room falling silent as the Attorney General took a breath. "Good evening," Bondi began, her voice firm and measured. "I have been made aware of recent accusations by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez alleging misconduct by myself and the Department of Justice. I want to make this very clear, these accusations are not just false, they are reckless. And in the interest of transparency, I have come prepared with the facts." Bondi lifted the thick dossier she had carried from the Oval Office and placed it on the podium, letting the microphones catch the sharp thud as it hit the surface. She opened it, revealing page after page of neatly organized documents, each one a potential political grenade. "First, let me address the baseless claim that I have misused my position to target political opponents. What you are about to hear are not mere accusations, but hard evidence of financial misconduct, misuse of taxpayer funds, and potential campaign finance violations involving Representative Ocasio-Cortez," Bondi declared, her eyes locking with the cameras, her words cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. As Bondi began reading from the documents, the room grew even quieter. She outlined a series of questionable financial transactions linked to AOC's campaign committee, referencing bank records, tax filings, and confidential whistleblower testimony. She spoke with the precision of a seasoned prosecutor, each sentence landing like a hammer. "If Representative Ocasio-Cortez believes she can make unfounded accusations without consequence, she is gravely mistaken," Bondi continued, leaning into the microphone. "I will not allow the integrity of this office to be undermined by reckless rhetoric. If necessary, I will use the full weight of the Department of Justice to hold her accountable, including pursuing criminal charges if the evidence supports it." Gasps rippled through the press corps. The boldness of Bondi's threat sent shockwaves through the political landscape. She wasn't just pushing back, she was going on the offensive, and it was clear she had come prepared for a fight. "Thank you for your time. I will take no questions at this moment, as the evidence must speak for itself," Bondi concluded, snapping the dossier shut before striding off the stage, her heels once again echoing through the halls of power. The cameras continued to roll as she disappeared behind the thick, soundproof doors of the press room, the image of her confident exit burning itself into the nation's collective consciousness. To be continued in Part 2. As the news of Bondi's explosive press conference spread, the political world erupted into chaos. Cable news networks switched into overdrive, their analysts dissecting every word of Bondi's statement. The phrase "pursuing criminal charges" echoed across the airwaves, sparking intense debates and social media firestorms. Meanwhile, in her Capitol Hill office, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat hunched over her desk, her phone buzzing relentlessly. Staffers darted in and out, their faces tight with worry as they whispered updates about the media frenzy outside. AOC had built her brand on being a fighter, a fearless advocate for progressive causes, but this time, the stakes felt different. One of her senior advisors, Sophia, rushed in, shutting the heavy oak door behind her. She held a stack of freshly printed documents, her expression grave. "Alex, you need to see this," Sophia said, laying the papers down in front of her. "It's Bondi's evidence, leaked to the press just now." AOC glanced down, her eyes skimming the pages. She felt a chill run down her spine. The documents were more comprehensive than she had expected. They included copies of emails, transaction records, and even internal campaign memos that should have been locked down. How did she get all of this? AOC whispered, her heart racing. She flipped through the pages, each new line adding to her sense of dread. These are private communications, this shouldn't even be possible. Sophia took a deep breath, lowering her voice. Bondi is playing hardball. She's got the resources of the entire Justice Department at her disposal. If even half of this is accurate, we could be looking at serious legal trouble. AOC clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had faced tough battles before, attacks from conservative pundits, smear campaigns, and even primary challenges, but this felt different. Bondi wasn't just threatening political fallout, she was threatening prison time. Get me my legal team, AOC said firmly, standing up from her desk. And get every file we have on Bondi. If she wants to come at me, she'd better be prepared for a fight. As the hours passed, AOC's office transformed into a war room. Advisors huddled over laptops, frantically typing away while her communications team drafted carefully worded statements to control the narrative. Meanwhile, AOC herself paced back and forth, her mind working through every possible angle. Finally, her chief of staff, Marcus, burst into the room, his face pale. Alex, he said, pausing to catch his breath. It's not just the DOJ. Bondi's allies in Congress are already talking about opening an ethics investigation. They're moving fast, they want you cornered before you can respond. AOC's jaw tightened. She knew what this meant, the Republicans weren't just trying to damage her reputation. They were trying to take her out of the game entirely, to eliminate one of the most vocal critics of the Trump administration before the 2026 midterms. She took a deep breath, her pulse pounding in her ears. This was no longer just a political scuffle. It was a full-blown war, and the stakes couldn't be higher. All right, AOC said, her eyes hardening. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. Schedule a press conference. I'm not backing down. The room fell silent, her staffers exchanging nervous glances. They had seen her fierce determination before, but this time felt different. The stakes were higher, the risks greater, but AOC was prepared to risk it all. As the minutes ticked by, AOC began to craft her counterattack, her mind racing with strategies, potential allies, and the skeletons she knew Bondi had in her closet. She would not go down without a fight, and if Bondi wanted a showdown, she would get one, a battle for the ages. The next morning, the steps of the Capitol were packed with reporters, their cameras and microphones aimed at the podium where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would soon stand. The air was thick with anticipation, the clatter of camera shutters blending with the low hum of hurried whispers among journalists. AOC's team had worked through the night, drafting her response and lining up allies in Congress who were willing to back her publicly. They knew that the key to surviving this political onslaught was not just refuting Bondi's claims, but flipping the narrative entirely. Finally, the tall doors of the Capitol swung open, and AOC emerged, flanked by a small group of her closest allies, Representatives Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, and Jamal Bowman. They walked down the steps together, their expressions steely, their eyes focused on the throngs of cameras below. AOC reached the podium, adjusting the microphone as the crowd fell silent. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the sea of expectant faces before her. Good morning, she began, her voice steady but firm. Yesterday, Attorney General Pam Bondi made a series of reckless and defamatory accusations against me, relying on so-called evidence that has yet to be vetted or even verified. This is a classic move by a desperate administration trying to silence its critics. Her words struck like a bolt of lightning, and the crowd leaned in, cameras zooming tighter as she continued. Let me be clear, AOC said, gripping the edges of the podium. I have always been an advocate for transparency, accountability, and justice, principles this administration seems to have forgotten. Bondi's attempts to smear my name are not just attacks on me, but on every American who believes in the power of free speech and democracy. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the crowd before pressing on. The documents she presented are nothing more than a collection of out-of-context emails and cherry-picked transactions meant to distract from the real issues facing our country. I will not be intimidated by these tactics. If Bondi wants a fight, she's going to get one. A murmur spread through the crowd, the press corps frantically scribbling notes and tapping on their phones. AOC had thrown down the gauntlet, refusing to be cowed by Bondi's threats. But AOC wasn't finished. She leaned in closer to the microphone, her voice dropping to a sharper tone. And let's not forget who Pam Bondi really is, she said, her eyes narrowing. This is the same Attorney General who has repeatedly used her position to shield powerful allies from accountability while going after her political enemies. If she wants to talk about corruption, she should start by looking in the mirror. At that moment, the tension in the air was palpable. AOC had turned the tables, shifting from defense to offense, and the crowd could feel it. I will not be silenced, and I will not stand by while the Attorney General tries to weaponize the Department of Justice for political gain. AOC continued, her voice rising with each word. If Bondi wants a fight, then I am ready, because the truth is on my side, and history will remember who stood up for justice and who tried to tear it down. With that, AOC stepped back from the podium, her eyes blazing, her fists clenched at her sides. Her allies flanked her as they marched back up the Capitol steps, their shoulders squared and heads held high. The cameras followed them, capturing every step as the crowd erupted into a frenzy of shouted questions and flashing lights. Back in the Justice Department, Bondi watched the live broadcast from her office, her eyes narrowing as AOC's words echoed through the screen. She felt a flicker of annoyance but quickly suppressed it. If AOC thought she could win this battle with fiery speeches alone, she was in for a rude awakening. Bondi reached for her phone, her fingers moving quickly as she dialed a secure line. Get the Special Investigations Unit on this, she said coldly. I want every inch of her financials, personal and political, turned inside out. If she wants to go to war, then I'll make sure she regrets it. As she hung up the phone, a sly smile crept across her lips. The battle lines had been drawn, and Bondi had no intention of backing down. The battle between Pam Bondi and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had quickly become the most talked about showdown in Washington. News outlets ran nonstop coverage, with pundits and analysts speculating on the fallout for both women. Bondi, a seasoned prosecutor known for her fierce courtroom style, had made it clear she wasn't afraid to use the full power of the Justice Department to take AOC down. But AOC, undeterred by Bondi's aggressive tactics, had launched her own counteroffensive, rallying her base and calling out what she framed as a corrupt Justice Department intent on silencing progressive voices. Behind the scenes, Bondi's team worked around the clock, scouring financial records, subpoenaing documents, and building a case that they hoped would end AOC's political career. Bondi herself had become a fixture in the Justice Department's war room, overseeing every detail of the operation with the precision of a seasoned general. Late one night, as Bondi sat reviewing a fresh stack of financial documents, her phone buzzed. It was her lead investigator, a no-nonsense former FBI agent named Mark Evans. Pam, you need to see this, Mark said, his voice crackling over the secure line. We just uncovered something big. Bondi leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Go on. We've traced a series of campaign donations linked to a shell corporation that appears to be funneling money to AOC's Political Action Committee, Mark explained, his tone urgent. The transactions are complex, layered through multiple accounts and LLCs, but we've confirmed that at least one of them has ties to foreign entities. Bondi's eyes narrowed. This was exactly the kind of explosive evidence she had been hoping for, the kind that could turn a political skirmish into a full-blown scandal. Send me everything you have, she said quickly. And keep this tight. I don't want a word of this leaking until we're ready to go public. As she hung up, Bondi allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. If these allegations held up, AOC could be facing not just an ethics investigation, but criminal charges, the kind that could end her career permanently. The following morning, Bondi arrived at the Justice Department with a renewed sense of purpose. She strode through the marble halls, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floors as she made her way to the secure briefing room. Inside, her senior staff was already gathered, their faces reflecting a mix of excitement and tension. Mark stood at the head of the table, a stack of freshly printed documents in front of him. All right, everyone, Bondi said, closing the door behind her. Let's get to work. Mark stepped forward, distributing copies of the documents to the assembled team. What you have in front of you are the financial records we pulled from our investigation into Ocasio-Cortez campaign finances. These documents show a clear pattern of questionable transactions, including payments from shell corporations linked to foreign entities. Bondi scanned the pages in front of her, her eyes moving quickly over the dense rows of numbers and account names. It was a tangled web of financial maneuvering, the kind of labyrinthine structure designed to obscure the true source of the funds. This is exactly what we needed, Bondi said, her tone sharp with satisfaction. We need to package this up into a clear, airtight case. I want a draft indictment ready by the end of the week. The room buzzed with energy as her team sprang into action, their laptops clacking furiously as they began piecing together the case. Bondi watched them for a moment, a sense of steely determination settling over her. She had spent her career taking down criminals and corrupt politicians, and she wasn't about to let AOC slip through her fingers. As the hours stretched into the afternoon, Bondi remained at the head of the table, reviewing documents, marking up drafts, and strategizing the next steps in her campaign against AOC. She could already see the headlines: Bondi takes down AOC in corruption scandal. And she was determined to make it a reality. "All right," Bondi said, standing up and straightening her jacket. "Let's get this done. No mistakes, no leaks. I want this operation locked down tight." As she left the room, Bondi felt a surge of adrenaline. The stakes were high, but she thrived under pressure. She had AOC in her sights, and she wasn't about to miss. The week following Pam Bondi's strategic push to expose Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's alleged corruption was nothing short of a political spectacle. Headlines exploded across every news outlet, with Bondi's claims of financial wrongdoing gaining traction in conservative circles. Every move by AOC was now scrutinized with the precision of a hawk, while every word she spoke in defense only seemed to ignite the firestorm further. Bondi knew the time had come to strike the final blow. The indictment was ready, meticulously crafted with damning evidence and testimony, and she had secured a press conference to unveil it all. The location was carefully chosen, the steps of the Justice Department itself, a symbol of power and authority. She would stand in front of the cameras as the face of justice and make her case to the American public. Meanwhile, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was gearing up for response. Her staff had been working overtime to craft a defense that would not only counter Bondi's accusations but also paint Bondi herself as a puppet of the Trump administration out to destroy a young, progressive voice. But AOC knew she was walking a fine line. Her past actions, her fervent social media presence, and the sharp edges of her rhetoric were all now under the microscope. Every misstep, every word that seemed too defensive could be twisted and used against her. The pressure was mounting, and though she had never backed down from a fight, even she felt the weight of the battle bearing down on her. The morning of Bondi's press conference arrived, and the streets surrounding the Justice Department were flooded with reporters and cameras. Bondi stood before the podium, her stance unwavering as she surveyed the crowd. Behind her, a large banner with the words "Justice for All" loomed, a bold statement of her mission. As the crowd hushed, Bondi stepped forward, her voice cool and calculated. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying with the power of years of legal experience. "Today, we take a stand against corruption. Today, we put an end to the games played by those who believe they are above the law." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a sitting member of Congress, has used her influence to funnel illegal foreign money into her campaign money that was meant to undermine the very fabric of our democratic system. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Bondi had just dropped a bombshell. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "The investigation has been thorough. The evidence is undeniable. We have traced the funds back to multiple foreign entities with a vested interest in American politics. This is not a simple case of poor judgment. This is a violation of the law, and it is time for her to answer for it." The cameras flashed as the weight of her statement began to hit the airwaves. Bondi was in full control now, her commanding presence swallowing the attention of the room. "I have instructed my office to move forward with an indictment. The American people deserve better than corrupt politicians who are willing to sell our country's sovereignty for their own gain." Her words hung in the air, leaving no doubt that the battle between her and AOC was far from over. Bondi's team had carefully crafted the narrative, and with this public display of dominance, it seemed she was firmly in the driver's seat. But just as the press conference was wrapping up, the unexpected happened. AOC, with her usual resolve, took to social media. A powerful video appeared on her Twitter feed, an unannounced live stream from her office. The video opened with AOC standing in front of a plain white wall, her expression serious but resolute. "Pam Bondi thinks she can intimidate me. She thinks that because I'm a woman, because I'm young, because I stand up for what's right, that she can take me down with lies and threats," AOC began, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "But let me tell you something, Pam. I will not be silenced. I will not let you bully me into submission." Her words, powerful and defiant, cut through the airwaves like a knife. She had turned the tables, making Bondi the target of a rhetorical attack that painted her as the villain in the story. We know exactly what this is about. This is about power, pure and simple. It's about trying to stop the movement for justice, equality, and reform. But let me be clear, no amount of intimidation, no amount of false accusations will ever stop us from pushing forward. We're going to fight this with everything we have because the truth is on our side. She then unveiled her own bombshell, a set of documents proving that the claims Bondi had made were based on misinterpreted data and flawed analysis. AOC's team had worked tirelessly to expose the holes in Bondi's case, and now it was AOC's turn to show the world that the entire scandal was a manufactured attack on her character. Pam Bondi may have the power of the Justice Department on her side, but she does not have the truth, AOC concluded, her eyes fierce and unwavering. And that's what will win in the end. The video went viral. Within hours, AOC's supporters flooded social media, calling for Bondi's resignation and accusing her of political overreach. Meanwhile, Bondi's press conference was already being dissected and critiqued by pundits who began to question the validity of her case. Was it truly a legitimate legal investigation or just a politically motivated attack? For the first time in days, Pam Bondi's confidence began to waver. She knew that the stakes had just been raised. This was no longer a simple legal battle, it was a full-scale political war. As the days went on, the fight raged on. Bondi's team scrambled to tighten the case, while AOC's supporters rallied behind her, eager to take down the corrupt establishment. It was a clash of ideologies, a battle between the forces of conservatism and progressivism, each side believing that their vision for America was the one true path forward. In the end, the question remained, who would come out on top? Would Bondi's relentless pursuit of justice win the day, or would AOC's defiant stand for the people prove to be the ultimate victory? Only time would tell.